Hi sir, my name is Olion. I want to present about the discussion on how much developmental is influenced by nature and nurture. The question of how nature versus nurture influence human development has been an ongoing debate for a very long time, and at present there is unclear winner, as both nature, that is genes, and nurture, is environmental factors, seem to play a vital and important role in human development. Before this issue can be fully explained, it is important to understand what nature and nurture actually are. Nature can be loosely defined as genetic inheritance, or the genetic makeup, the information encoded in your genes, which a person inherits from both parents at the time of conception and carries throughout life. Several things in an individual are genetically inherited, ranging from gender, eye color, risk for certain disease, and exceptional talents to height. The concept of nature thus refer to biologically inherited tendencies and abilities that people have and which may get revealed later on as they grow up. In contrast, nature can be defined as the different environmental factors to which a person is subjected from birth to death. Environmental factors involve many dimensions. They include both physical environments. A good example is prenatal nutrition, and social environments such as the neighborhood, media, and peer pressure. Also, environmental factors has different level of impact on human development, as they involve multiple layers, so actions ranging from most immediate, such as families, friends, and neighborhoods, to bigger societal contexts like school system and local governments, as well as macro factors such as politics on the international level, or say global warming. These layers are also impacted by other factors outside them. For example, teenagers are exposed to not just peer pressure from their peers, but also to parental ideas, community standards, or ethnic views. Next is the influence of nature and nurture on human development. Nature is responsible for the growth of a person from the fetus level until development into a normal adult. The genetic makeup of a human being is responsible for their eyes and hair, as well as distinguishing features which are inherited. Nature can only assist in the growth of the fetus into a normal, well-developed adult who may have inherited some special talents. Thus, it can be concluded that nature uses the genetic coding to help in physical development and thus impart some positive or negative traits to an individual. However, it is nurture which can be utilized to improve positive traits and diminish the effect of negative traits in a child. It is indeed important to recognize that nature in the form of inherited traits does exist, but a person's overall behavior is influenced a great deal by nurture or upbringing and the environmental factors involved in this upbringing. Several recent studies carried out on infant and child behavior have shown that there is significant evidence to support the fact that nurture strongly influences human development, especially in the early years. In traditional society, most parents encourage their kids to take part in extracurricular activities like learning music, dance, or sports in accordance with the child's talents and interests. The talents have been given by nature, but they can only be developed into skills through the hard work of nurture. How does nature versus nurture affect our genes? Most conventional theories of nature versus nurture consider the difference in humans a result of elements of both your genetic makeup and your environment. And next, how does nature versus nurture affect our mental and physical health? It is understood that certain physical traits as well as the susceptibility to most physical and mental health disorders tend to run in families. Specifically, whatever illness your parents, grandparents, siblings, and other biological family members have does not guarantee you will inherit them, but it does increase the likelihood that you may develop them. On the other hand, it is understood that environmental factors often have a significant effect on whether or not you develop the health problems that run in your family. You can change your gene expression. A couple of examples of how the environment, nature, can provide a benefit and possible decrease your risk in getting an illness from your family are: if you are at risk for heart disease or diabetes, eat a healthy diet and exercise. And second, if you are at risk for other conditions, for example, breast or colon cancer, get regular health screenings like mammograms and colonoscopies per your doctor's recommendation. And examples of how negative environmental influence can affect genetic expression include exposure to community violence, increasing the likelihood of anxiety. And second is depression and negative behaviors. And children who are exposed to secondhand smoke may develop cancers more often than those who do not have the experience. Nature versus nurture influence impacting child development. Genes determine certain human characteristics such as eyes, hair, color, and the incidence of genetic disease. However, most human traits, including life expectancy, height, and weight, have both an environmental and genetic component. For example, social learning theory states that children learn by observing the behavior of others. So, parenting style and the child's learned experience determine whether they behave politely or aggressively in specific situations. By contrast, learning's genetic component encompasses the biological foundation of cognitive process, as explained in Frontiers in Psychology. Genetic and epigenetic contributions to the learning process and heritable and interact with behavioral learning such as study habits and the availability of educational resources. How both nature versus nurture contribute to child development. The field of behavioral genetics studies how nature and nurture combine to affect a child's development. It states that while genetics have a greater overall impact on person's makeup than their family environment does, most of an individual's behavior traits cannot be traced to specific genes or family characteristics. Instead, each human behavior trait is associated with a great number of genetic variants, each of which contributes a very small amount to the expression of the traits. Nature, genetic, and hereditary influence. A study of fraternal and identical twins found that babies' sleeping patterns are determined primarily by genetics. Similarly, 60% of a baby's temperament is set by their genetic makeup. Whether they are sociable or shy is also primarily driven by genes. Also controlled primarily by heredity are the foods a baby prefers and whether the baby is active or sedentary. And nurture, environmental influence. While genetics are key drivers of this and other aspects of a child's development, that development is also influenced by what baby experience. For example, babies with poor sleep patterns can benefit from being exposed to sunlight during the day and by parents establishing a bedtime routine that induces better sleep. Whether a baby is easy to climb and sort when crying is determined by genes, but sodding, rocking, sewing, and other activities help overcomes this genetic predisposition. Nature's biological psychology and nurture's behaviorism. Biological psychology examines thoughts, feelings, and behaviors from a psychological perspective. The field studies how a person's brain's nervous system, hormones, and other physical features affect behavior. It also studies the mechanism of inheritance via genes on the behavioral likeness of identical twins. For example, conversely, behaviorism, also called behavioral psychology considers how interaction with the environment can condition behavior. This field considers only observable behavior, believing that moods, cognition, and emotion are too subjective to be measurable. Types of conditioning include classical conditioning, which pairs a natural stimulus with a naturally occurring stimulus until each evokes the same response, and operant or instrumental conditioning, which use reinforcement, punishment to evoke the desired behavior. Natural scientific influence and natural social contracts. While approach to child development that emphasize nature over nurture may appear to be more grounded in science than in behavior modification. Both nature and nurture have scientific foundations that are paired with environmental controls. In general, nature looks at the impact of such physical approach as neurotransmitters and genome sequencing on child development, while nurture focuses on aspects such as peer pressure and social influence. In conclusions, it is evident that nature is responsible for producing healthy, well-developed babies. It is also nurture that plays an important role in the early human development is quicker and more focused due to nurture as it builds up on the talents provided by nature. Nature is responsible for the normal development of the fetus into a normal and healthy infant, but it cannot entirely develop that fetus into an intelligent, knowledgeable, or athletic adult. This is possible only through the exposure that nurture gives a person. Therefore, it would be correct to say that although the nature has some degree of influence, nurture strongly influences early human development.